Welcome to a night unlike any I had ever experienced before. The moment my eyes fluttered open, I felt it, an unfamiliar weight pressing gently against my bed, and a subtle warmth that didn't belong to me. My pulse jumped, adrenaline instantly surging, and I froze, heart hammering in my chest as I scanned the darkness. There, illuminated faintly by the glow of the street lights filtering through the curtains, was my alien roommate, eyes glinting like twin pools of liquid sapphire, staring at me with a curiosity that mirrored my own. I had lived with Xylan for months, shared laughter, arguments, and countless meals, but this, the intimacy of being caught alone in the middle of the night, was something entirely new, completely unexpected. I barely dared to breathe, not wanting to disrupt the fragile thread of tension that hung in the room, thick and almost tangible. Xylan's body was unlike anything I had ever seen, a blend of shapes and textures that defied human biology. Her skin shimmered with an iridescent hue, somewhere between deep violet and pale blue, rippling faintly with every motion she made. Her fingers, long, elegant, and tipped with soft, translucent pads, hovered slightly above the blanket as if testing my reaction, unsure if this contact would be welcome or forbidden. The air between us crackled with a silent electricity, the kind that forms when two beings are aware of one another in a way that words cannot contain. I could feel it radiating from her, an alien yet deeply instinctive energy that seemed to bypass language entirely. For a long moment, neither of us moved, and I wondered if I had imagined it, perhaps a sleep-deprived hallucination brought on by the odd late-night glow of our apartment. But the gentle sway of her luminous antennae, the faint hum of her breathing, the subtle shift of her limbs confirmed that Xylan was real, undeniably present, and undeniably interested in my very human presence. Curiosity wrestled with fear within me, each emotion twisting into the other until I could scarcely tell which was stronger. Was this some kind of territorial assertion, an alien equivalent of marking a space, or something far more personal, intimate, and complicated? Finally, unable to contain myself, I spoke, my voice barely more than a whisper. "Xylan, what are you doing?" My words sounded fragile, ridiculous even, but they hung in the space between us. The alien tilted her head slightly, the movements smooth and fluid, like liquid metal flowing under a silent command. She emitted a series of soft chimes, musical and melodic, that somehow conveyed curiosity, reassurance, and a hint of amusement all at once. I had been learning her language, or at least enough to interpret tones and patterns, and I understood, she was not here to threaten me. She was here to communicate in the only way she knew how in this intimate, solitary moment. Slowly, carefully, I extended a hand toward her, palm open, a gesture I hoped would convey peace and trust. She mirrored me almost instantly, our fingers brushing lightly, the sensation electric, alien and strangely comforting at once. Her skin was cooler than I expected, with a faint shimmer that made it seem almost unreal, like touching the surface of a living gemstone. The touch was brief, yet it spoke volumes, an unspoken acknowledgement of mutual curiosity and an agreement that the night held possibilities neither of us had anticipated. Time seemed to stretch, elongating each heartbeat into an eternity, as we assessed one another in silence. The apartment, usually a sanctuary of mundane human life, felt charged, transformed into a stage for something extraordinary. Outside, the city hummed and buzzed, oblivious to the moment unfolding in my small bedroom, and yet inside, every breath, every glance, every subtle movement seemed monumental. It was as if the universe had compressed, focusing all of its weight and energy into this single point of connection between two vastly different beings. I swallowed hard, my voice catching when I tried to speak again. "Why are you here?" It sounded naive, but I needed to understand. She responded with another series of chimes, soft and complex, almost a song, and I realized that her presence was not bound by human logic or expectation. This was a being operating on instincts, emotions, and signals that transcended spoken language. And in that moment, I understood something profound. The rules of human interaction did not apply here. We were negotiating, wordlessly, a bridge between species. She shifted slightly, the movement sending a ripple of light across her skin, and I realized that my fear was slowly giving way to something more nuanced: wonder, fascination, even a budding sense of connection that defied explanation. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once, the kind of feeling that leaves you breathless and shaking because you are standing on the edge of something beyond comprehension, something that could change your understanding of life, love, and the nature of companionship itself. As the minutes passed, I found my body relaxing, tension easing, replaced by a cautious anticipation. Xylan mirrored this subtly, her eyes reflecting the dim light with a softness I had never seen before. It was no longer a question of who occupied the bed, who had intruded, or who belonged. The moment had transformed into a silent dialogue of presence and attention, a shared experience that required no words. And in that quiet, suspended space, I felt an unspoken promise that this night, this encounter, would mark the beginning of something remarkable, something neither human nor alien had anticipated, but something undeniably real. The hum of her body, the gentle sway of her antennae, the subtle ripple of her skin, all became the language we spoke in silence. My heart slowed, my fear subsided, and a profound sense of awe settled over me. Here, in my small bedroom, the impossible had become tangible. Two beings, separated by light years of biology and culture, were finding a common understanding, one that transcended species, one that embraced curiosity, trust, and a tentative, thrilling intimacy. I knew then that the night was far from over. Questions lingered, possibilities stretched endlessly ahead, and the connection we had forged in those first moments would shape everything that followed. And as I leaned back against my pillow, still watching her with a mixture of wonder and cautious excitement, I understood, life with Xylan would never be ordinary, never predictable, and perhaps, just perhaps, never lonely again. The first light of dawn crept into the room, brushing against Xylan's shimmering skin and casting iridescent patterns across the walls. I was still awake, lying on my side, eyes fixed on her as she moved gracefully on the bed, adjusting her position as if she were balancing between worlds. There was a serenity about her, a fluid elegance that was alien yet oddly familiar. I wondered how it was possible to feel both cautious and comforted at the same time. Her presence was overwhelming, but not in a threatening way. Rather, it was a reminder that life could surprise you in ways you never anticipated. I shifted slightly, careful not to disturb her, and noticed the subtle rise and fall of her chest, or at least what I assumed were analogous parts of her anatomy. There was a rhythm to her breathing, a cadence that was almost musical. The air between us felt alive, charged with an energy that went beyond simple curiosity. I realized that in those first hours, my understanding of companionship had expanded. It was no longer confined to the human perspective. To share a space with Xylan was to navigate a landscape of emotions and instincts that defied explanation, yet somehow resonated deeply with the core of who I was. I wanted to speak, to ask questions, but words felt clumsy, inadequate for conveying what I was experiencing. Instead, I observed, taking in the tiny details, the way her antennae flickered with subtle shifts in light, the faint hum that seemed to emanate from her skin, the graceful arc of her limbs as she moved. Each motion was deliberate, controlled, yet imbued with a kind of effortless elegance. It was mesmerizing, hypnotic even, and I felt a mixture of awe and a strange, growing fondness. As minutes turned into hours, I realized that Xylan had not moved much, choosing instead to observe me, or perhaps just exist alongside me in a silent, shared awareness. The concept of presence took on a new meaning. I was used to humans, used to conversation, used to verbal reassurances and physical gestures that conveyed comfort. But with Xylan, presence alone was enough. Her gaze, her stillness, her subtle movements, they were all communication, a language of being that transcended speech. I remembered the times we had shared before, laughing over simple human routines, arguing over trivial disagreements about food or chores. Those moments had been valuable, yes, but they were nothing compared to this. This was a connection stripped of pretense, raw and immediate. It demanded attention, demanded engagement on a level I had never encountered. And as I watched her, I realized that she, too, was learning. Her glimmering eyes tracked me constantly, reading my expressions, interpreting my body language, and responding in ways I could feel rather than hear. Eventually, I reached out, daring to touch her arm lightly. The moment my fingers brushed her skin, she emitted a soft harmonic vibration, a sound that resonated in my chest and seemed to reverberate in the very air around us. It was a greeting, a recognition, a silent acknowledgement that our shared understanding had taken a step forward. I smiled nervously, unsure if my own reactions were being interpreted correctly, but her subtle nod reassured me. She understood, and in that understanding lay a comfort I could not have anticipated. Time seemed to lose its conventional meaning. Hours passed, or perhaps only minutes, I could not tell. The room was filled with the quiet symphony of her presence, the soft hums, the gentle shifts of her body, the faint flicker of colors across her skin. I felt as though I were witnessing something sacred, a glimpse into a world that existed parallel to my own but had never intersected with it until now. It was intoxicating, overwhelming, and profoundly moving all at once. Eventually, hunger reminded me of the human necessities I could not ignore. I rose carefully from the bed, careful not to startle her, and padded quietly to the small kitchen. The apartment was silent except for the faint sounds of Xylan's movements behind me. She followed at a distance, her eyes glowing softly in the dim morning light, and I realized that even in this mundane activity, her presence was transformative. Ordinary routines became extraordinary simply because she was part of them. I prepared a simple breakfast, feeling a mix of anxiety and anticipation. How would she react to human food? Would she even want it? I had never offered her a meal before, never tested the boundaries of our shared existence in this way. When I placed a small plate of scrambled eggs on the counter, she approached cautiously, sniffing the air with an expression that was equal parts curiosity and hesitation. I held my breath, watching as she tentatively touched the plate with one delicate finger. A harmonic vibration emanated from her again, softer this time, almost contemplative. She tasted it, then looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw what I could only interpret as approval. It was a small victory, yet monumental in its own way. I laughed quietly, a sound that seemed to bridge the gap between our species, and she emitted a higher-pitched, musical tone in response, almost as if laughing back. The shared moment felt like a promise that despite the differences, despite the vast chasm of biology and culture, connection was possible. It was fragile, tentative, but real. As the morning sun continued to rise, casting warm light across the apartment, I felt a sense of anticipation building. Today would not be like any other day. Xylan and I had crossed the threshold, stepped into a realm of understanding and intimacy that neither of us had anticipated. And though the world outside continued on its usual path, within these four walls, a new reality had begun, one that would challenge, surprise, and transform both of us in ways we could not yet imagine. I returned to the bedroom, carrying a small plate for her. She accepted it with a delicate nod, and as she tasted the food, I observed her with an awareness that went beyond simple observation. This was learning, adaptation, connection, human and alien, intertwined in a quiet dance that was as thrilling as it was bewildering. The day stretched ahead of us, filled with potential and uncertainty. But in that moment, as we shared breakfast, I realized something essential. Life with Xylan would never be ordinary. Each encounter, each gesture, each unspoken communication carried weight and meaning beyond human comprehension. And as she looked at me with those luminous eyes, I understood that we were not merely roommates or acquaintances. We were companions navigating a shared existence, discovering the depth and complexity of interspecies connection one moment at a time. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting striped shadows across the room. Xylan had moved closer to the window, her iridescent skin shimmering with every subtle movement, and I found myself watching her, captivated by the play of light and color. There was something almost meditative about the way she observed the world, the way she seemed to absorb the environment, analyzing it without the rush or distraction that humans so often succumb to. I realized that in sharing this space with her, I was being taught patience, mindfulness, and a perspective that extended far beyond my own limited human understanding. I attempted to engage her in conversation, speaking in carefully chosen words, attempting to make my thoughts and intentions clear. She responded with soft melodic tones, a language I was still learning to interpret. Each inflection, each harmonic vibration carried meaning that words alone could not capture. I listened intently, trying to discern the nuances, the subtle variations that indicated curiosity, humor, or contemplation. And in that effort I felt a bond forming, one that transcended simple friendship. We were learning each other's rhythms, decoding the unspoken language of presence, and finding comfort in the delicate balance of understanding. As the hours passed, I decided to show Xylan something of human life beyond our apartment. Carefully, I guided her to the small balcony, where the city sprawled below us, bustling and vibrant. She leaned against the railing, antennae twitching as she scanned the horizon. Her eyes reflected the sunlight, scattering colors in a dazzling display, and I noticed the way her body seemed to respond to the energy of the city, absorbing the motion, the sounds, and the ever-shifting patterns of human existence. I realized then that for all her alien nature, she was deeply perceptive, attuned to the world in a way I could scarcely comprehend. Curiosity ignited within me. I wanted to show her everything, to help her experience the mundane and extraordinary aspects of human life. We moved together through the apartment, exploring the nuances of sound, texture, and smell. I pointed out the small collection of books on the shelf, the array of photographs capturing fleeting moments of my life, the tiny potted plants thriving in the sunlight. Xylan observed each detail with fascination, her expressive eyes flicking from object to object, and I could see her attempting to internalize, to categorize, to understand. Her presence made the familiar unfamiliar, infusing ordinary objects with a sense of wonder and possibility that I had never noticed before. At one point, she reached for a small globe I had kept on my desk, spinning it gently in her hands. I watched as she traced the lines of continents and oceans, her touch delicate, reverent. There was a curiosity in her movements, a desire to comprehend a world she had never inhabited. I realized that this was not mere novelty. It was an earnest attempt to connect with my perspective, to bridge the gap between our experiences. And I felt a swell of gratitude that she sought understanding, that she valued connection, that she considered the world through the lens of another being. We spent the remainder of the afternoon in quiet companionship. I read aloud from a book I had been revisiting, narrating tales of adventure and human resilience. Xylan listened, occasionally tilting her head or emitting a harmonic tone that I interpreted as engagement. I marveled at how she seemed to absorb the narrative not only with her mind but with her entire being. The cadence of my voice, the rhythm of words, the ebb and flow of emotion, they resonated with her in ways that defied explanation. And in that resonance, I felt a profound connection, a shared understanding that transcended the boundaries of species, biology, and language. As evening approached, the room darkened, and I noticed a subtle change in Xylan's demeanor. Her skin shifted hues, from gentle blues to deep purples, reflecting an internal rhythm that I was still learning to interpret. There was a quiet intensity in her gaze, an anticipation that seemed almost electric. I realized that she was preparing for something, a shift in energy that I could feel even without understanding its full significance. My heartbeat quickened, a mixture of excitement and apprehension coursing through me. I reached out again, resting a hand lightly on hers, and she responded with a soft vibration that resonated through both of us. It was a gesture of trust, an acknowledgement that the connection we were cultivating was mutual. I marveled at the complexity of her existence, the intricate interplay of instincts, emotions, and intentions that shaped her every movement. In that moment, I understood something essential. To live alongside Xylan was to embrace uncertainty, to welcome the unknown, and to find beauty in the extraordinary. Night fell, and with it came the quiet hush that enveloped the apartment. We settled together on the bed, not touching but close enough to feel each other's presence. I felt a sense of awe, an awareness of the fragility and significance of the bond we were forging. The world outside continued in its ceaseless motion, yet within this small space, time seemed suspended. The hum of the city, the faint rustle of leaves, the subtle rhythms of Xylan's body, they formed a symphony that filled the room, a testament to the delicate balance of coexistence. As I drifted toward sleep, I reflected on the journey of the day. From the moment I awoke to find her on my bed, to the hours spent exploring, learning, and sharing quiet moments, I realized that my life had irrevocably changed. Xylan had introduced me to a reality that was richer, more complex, and more vibrant than I had ever imagined. And in that realization, I felt a sense of gratitude, wonder, and anticipation for the days to come. I knew that challenges lay ahead. Understanding each other would not always be easy. Differences in biology, culture, and perception would inevitably create moments of tension, confusion, and miscommunication. But I also knew that we had taken the first steps toward a profound connection, one that transcended the boundaries of species and embraced the essence of what it meant to be alive. And as sleep claimed me, I felt the quiet, reassuring presence of Xylan beside me, a reminder that even in the vast unknown, companionship, trust, and understanding were possible. The following morning brought a new rhythm to our shared space. The soft light of dawn filtered through the blinds, painting the room in gentle shades of gold and lavender. Xylan had already been awake, her luminous eyes reflecting the shifting colors of the early light. I watched her for a moment, captivated by the subtle play of shadows across her iridescent skin, and felt a renewed sense of wonder. Overnight, something had shifted between us, a quiet understanding that went beyond words or gestures, an acknowledgement that we were no longer merely human and aliens sharing a living space, but companions navigating the delicate intricacies of coexistence. I moved carefully, mindful of her presence, and began my morning routine. Every action felt layered with significance, as if the simple act of brushing my teeth or pouring coffee was now imbued with a new dimension because she observed, absorbed, and sometimes mirrored my movements. She tilted her head curiously as I lifted a mug to my lips, and I smiled softly, offering her a gesture of inclusion. She responded with a harmonic tone, soft and musical, vibrating faintly in the air between us. I had learned to interpret these tones. This one conveyed amusement and engagement. It was remarkable how much emotion and meaning could be carried in sound that humans could scarcely produce or comprehend. Breakfast became an almost ceremonial act. I prepared a small assortment of foods, trying to balance flavors and textures that might be appealing to her, and she examined each item with a careful curiosity. When she tasted a piece of fruit, her reaction was subtle but discernible, a gentle shift in the hue of her skin, a melodic tone of approval that resonated lightly against my chest. I laughed quietly, delighting in the simple success of our shared meal, and marveled at how even the most mundane human activities could take on extraordinary significance in her presence. The ordinary had become extraordinary, the familiar transformed into a landscape of discovery and wonder. After breakfast, I suggested we take a walk outside. The city stretched before us, alive with motion, sound, and countless unseen stories. Xylan's reaction to the outside world was fascinating. Her gaze flitted from structure to structure, her antennae twitching in subtle rhythms as she absorbed every detail. The way the light reflected off windows, the distant hum of traffic, the scent of flowers blooming in a small urban park. She moved with deliberate grace, her body attuned to the nuances of motion and energy that most humans ignored. I followed her lead, observing her interaction with the environment, and in doing so, I began to see the city through her eyes, vibrant, dynamic, and alive with countless patterns of life. As we walked, strangers passed by, some pausing briefly to glance at her. I could feel the questions in their stares, the unspoken wonder and unease. Xylan seemed aware, yet unbothered, moving with an ease and confidence that came from a life lived under scrutiny and adaptation. I realized that in her presence, I too was becoming more observant, more mindful, more attuned to the subtle complexities of existence. The simple act of walking became a shared exploration, a silent exchange of curiosity and understanding that deepened with every step. Returning to the apartment, I noticed a subtle shift in Xylan's energy. She moved toward the window, gazing out with a contemplative intensity that was almost palpable. I sat nearby, respecting the quiet moment, yet unable to resist the pull of curiosity. "Are you thinking about something?" I asked softly, my voice hesitant. She emitted a series of harmonic tones, complex and layered, which I interpreted as a thoughtful affirmation. She was processing, analyzing, reflecting, not unlike a human might, but in a way that was uniquely her own, blending instinct, emotion, and perception into a seamless whole. The afternoon was spent in exploration and conversation. I shared stories of my childhood, memories of triumphs and failures, moments of joy and heartbreak. Xylan listened with a rapt attention, occasionally responding with melodic tones that conveyed understanding, empathy, and sometimes subtle amusement. It was astonishing how a being so alien could resonate so profoundly with human emotion. Each interaction, each shared story, seemed to strengthen the invisible thread connecting us, weaving a bond that defied description, a tapestry of understanding, trust, and shared curiosity. As evening approached, the city outside transitioned from gold to deep indigo, the lights flickering on one by one. Xylan moved closer, her presence warm, steady, and reassuring. We sat together on the couch, side by side, without touching but connected through the sheer intensity of shared attention. The room was filled with the quiet symphony of life, the distant hum of traffic, the faint rustle of leaves, and the soft harmonic vibrations she occasionally emitted. It was a moment of profound serenity, a pause in the ceaseless motion of existence, a shared recognition that this connection, fragile yet enduring, was something extraordinary. Night fell completely, and with it came a calm intimacy. We returned to the bedroom, where the bed had become a space of quiet reflection rather than simple rest. I lay down, aware of her presence beside me, and felt the familiar mixture of awe, curiosity, and anticipation. Our eyes met, and in that gaze, I sensed a silent promise, an unspoken agreement that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, learning, adapting, and discovering the depths of connection across the boundaries of species. In the stillness, I reflected on the journey we had undertaken. From the startling shock of waking to find her on my bed, to the hours spent exploring, sharing, and understanding, I realized that life had irrevocably changed. Xylan had opened a doorway into a realm of experience, perception, and emotion that I had never known existed. Ordinary routines, once mundane, had been transformed into opportunities for discovery, understanding, and wonder. And in that transformation, I had come to understand something essential. The universe was vast, mysterious, and infinitely more beautiful when shared with another being willing to see, feel, and learn alongside you. As sleep finally claimed me, I felt a gentle vibration, subtle yet comforting, emanating from Xylan. It was a reminder of the connection we had forged, a promise of countless moments yet to come. And in that quiet, suspended instant, I understood the truth of what it meant to live alongside her, not merely to coexist, but to share, to learn, and to embrace the extraordinary potential of interspecies friendship, trust, and intimacy. No words were necessary. The night, the room, the city beyond the window, all of it existed as a canvas upon which we could paint the story of what it meant to connect, to understand, and to discover the unexpected wonders of companionship across the stars.